All right, so I'm out at Pescadero. It's been a while since I've been here. It's kind of windy and chilly, even though it's early July. Typical Northern California weather. Thinking of making something of the scene behind me. I'm mostly attracted to the color in the water, in particular around the white water. There's not a lot of interest in the distance, but I might add some light in the sky. I'll be painting over an old 14 by 18 inch panel. I've got a bunch of colors left over from a previous painting. All right, I've got a mixture here of titanium white, ultramarine blue, and a bit of burnt sienna. And I'm using liquin as my medium. And typically I'll just put a little bit on the brush and then mix it into the paint that I've mixed up. Sometimes I'll need to add a touch of mineral spirits to make it a little bit more fluid. The first step is to eliminate the old painting. So starting with the sky here, and I've decided to place the horizon at about the top quarter. I've got a mixture here of ultramarine blue and a bit of alizarin crimson. I'm going to use a little less liquid for this mix. I'm going to quickly sketch out the shape for the rocks. The reason I left this mix a little thicker is because I wanted a bit more coverage. I am keeping the paint fairly thin though, because I will be adjusting the color and value, just playing around with shapes at this point. For the water, I've got a mixture of ultramarine blue, a bit of burnt sienna, titanium white, and also some alizarin crimson. And I've thinned this mix with liquid as well. Artists use medium for various different reasons. I think the most common reason is that it allows you to thin the paint without breaking down the binder. In other words, you could thin the paint without weakening its ability to stick to the panel or canvas, but it also allows you to apply the paint quickly and in a more fluid fashion, which I find helpful when painting seascapes. It's nice to be able to mimic the motion of the water. For the white water, I've got a mixture of titanium white and a bit of this leftover purplish mix, adding some liquid. I don't know if you can see that, but just a touch, mixing it in. Adding a touch of mineral spirits. It takes practice to get the mix right, but it's also a very personal thing. So you just need to experiment with medium and mineral spirits mixtures until you come up with something that works for you. Using the white water to carve out the shape of the rocks. And I'm thinking of having a breaking wave in this area. Some white water that comes in here. There's also some white water on this side of the rocks as well. And I'll further define the shapes out here. All right, so at this point I've got the whole panel covered, so I step back about 10 or 15 feet. I'm just looking at the big shapes, trying to decide if I like the composition or not. I think I do like the arrangement of shapes, so I'm gonna keep going, adding little bits of color, and I'm trying to be spontaneous with the paint application and not overthink things. I like to work quickly and spontaneously and then step back and build on little bits of magic or things that I think are working. I'm reinforcing the dark shapes using a mixture of ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, and I'm just squinting at the scene to simplify the shapes. As I mentioned before, working quickly just to capture a quick impression and then try to build upon that. If I'm not seeing any magic or anything that inspires me, I'm not afraid to scrape down an area and rework it. But I find most of the time when I work quickly, there's a lot of good stuff to choose from. I've got a mixture here of burnt sienna, titanium white, and a bit of yellow ochre. Time to get some warmth into the painting. And there's some sand on the top of this rock right here. Some of that color on these rocks as well. There are times when I use medium and times when I don't. Lately I have been using liquid again. I stopped using it just because the batch I got smelled so strong. It was very toxic smelling. Definitely a medium you don't want to use indoors, but even outdoors it was making me nauseous. I love the way liquid behaves though. So today's windy, and so I'm using it. And I am actually feeling the effects a little bit. It is making me a little queasy, even though it's windy out here. I've experimented with other mediums like walnut oil or a linseed oil, stand oil mix. And I kind of like that mixture. And that mixture is 1 part mineral spirits, 1 part stand oil, and 2 parts linseed oil. I have not used the walnut oil in quite a while. The walnut oil that I used had an alkyd base to it, so it did dry fairly quickly, I think in about 24 hours. Got a mixture here of titanium white and a little bit of burnt sienna and a touch of alizarin crimson. Decided to add a bit of light in the sky. It's nice to have a bit of light in the distance to draw the eye. I've got a mixture here of ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and titanium white. I'm seeing some cerulean notes in the distance. I used a homemade straight edge to straighten out my horizon, and I also added a bit of purple to the horizon. A lot of beginning painters are confused or intimidated when it comes to medium, but there's really no need to be afraid. The best thing to do is just experiment with a bunch of different mediums. A lot of times we want to be told how to use something, and honestly I found that the best thing is just to personally experiment. Maybe you'll come up with a method that other people will imitate. We've got some titanium white here, added a bit of this blue-green color, and mixing in quite a bit of liquid. I want the paint to be very fluid. I've got quite a bit of paint on the brush, and then I'm just quickly applying the paint, adding to the bits of white water that I already have. I decided to add some rocks out in the distance here. Got a mixture here of ultramarine blue, titanium white, and I've graded down a bit with some burnt sienna, adding some sky reflections to the water. All right, so here's what I finished up with. This painting took just over an hour to complete. It was finished on site. Even though the sun did eventually come out, I decided to stick with the overcast motif. I used 2 brushes on this painting. I used a number 6 natural bristle flat and a number 8 natural bristle flat. As I mentioned before, I love natural bristle flats. They tend to hold a lot of paint, especially when they're new. It's important to be able to load your brush with a lot of paint in order to create fluid effects or to mimic the look of the water. One thing to keep in mind when using an alkyd medium or a fast drying medium when plein air painting is that warm weather will often accelerate the drying time. So about an hour or an hour and a half into the painting process, the paint starts getting tacky or sticky, which I find frustrating. So typically if I'm going to paint in warm weather, I will use a traditional linseed oil based medium, something that is not going to dry quickly. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. There's also a PayPal tip jar down below, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative. I'll see you guys in the next video.